Okay, so I added some smoke and some snow. It's snowing. We're coming down the mountain. I added that with the blending of the snow and the fog that I made with the dirty colors that came off of the edge of these pine trees. And so it just muddied it up a little bit, but that's going to give us a nice base to put in for the snow, because you always have to have a dark background to put the snow on to blend. Now for my middle layer of pine trees, I mixed the ivory black with this red to make a reddish purple gray, because it's going to be dark towards the front. But then my final trees that I'm going to put on here will be totally black, because they will be in the total foreground. All right, let's make one of these pine trees here. We're going to start right up here. And reloading some more paint. And we're not worried about that pine tree being a little too airy. We're going to add some definition to him later. Sometimes you have to add the snow after it dries. If you have too many layers of paint, it doesn't seem to want to stick unless you add a little bit of thinner to it. I don't like to add thinner. It just extends the drying time and keeps it from setting up right. So we may or may not add the definition to the trees in the foreground. I'm just trying to add a bank along that lake so that we can pull down the reflections. So I'll show you how we do that. I'm going to take and add some white with the knife along the center of that row of bushes that I just made for the bank. And what that's going to do is be able to be pulled down to make the reflections and the lake. So we're going to take and just push that up in there and pull down. Push in there and pull down. And go all along that line. We can always add the water line back in when we're done. And clean off your brush this time before you go across. And then to make the water look real, you just go across it real lightly. So we go down. And then across. And that gets you those nice reflections. And that'll be our little snowy lake. Now to add our water line back in, I've mixed a marbly mix of the gray, pink, and the white. We're just going to draw a little line there on our Bob Ross knife, and we're going to go back in and scissor in some water line here just along the edge of the lake. And then we're going to pull through that one more time to get a tiny, tiny roll. And then we're going to add some interest to the water and make it look icy. And give it a little bit of a watery look. We can add more or less of that depending on how you like it. Less is more. Since it's a snow scene, I like to pay special attention to the edges and just add a little bit more of that snow around the edges on both sides. We have to do this before we add the bushes, or else we won't be able to finish the lake because we're coming forward. So the lake is pushed back. We're going to have bushes along here. The black tree is going to go over here, and then these bushes will also be black, tipped with a little bit of pink and some snow. But we have to finish the lake in order to put that on top of that. Here I added a little definition with that darker color that I had mixed up for the medium trees, this tree right here. And I added a little bank just by doing that little roll of paint and then tapping it on there. And I think that that adds a little bit more depth and definition to that area where those reeds and things are along the bank. Okay, so in order to do the big black tree that we're going to put on the left side of the painting, we have pulled down with the knife a great deal of black, ivory black paint. I've used other blacks, but ivory seems to be the most pigmented and less translucent, and I can work with it a lot better. We might even highlight the tree with some pink. We'll see. But this one has to be the darkest because it's going to be the most foreground. And it has to be the tallest. So it has to be taller than this one to be able to be realistically in our front part of our painting. So we're going to start here and just make a monster tree. And I like him to come down a little further than this one, but not quite all the way to the bottom because I want to be able to add some little bushes and things. Okay, I've reloaded and I'm going to get this a little bit more definition. Get some more hangy downs here going because we're going to definitely put some snow on this baby. So just anything right there. We just need some dark to be able to show that that's where the tree is. Okay, that looks pretty good. It's really half the tree. The other half's over here somewhere. So I've added just a little bit of interest to the trees. I put a roll of paint on and I've just dabbed so there's a little bit of bark in there, a little bit of tree stump here, and also on this one I mixed up some pinky gray for this one. We could have used brown, but I didn't want to add a fourth color to the painting. So what I've done is added with a roll of paint on the knife, a little bit of snow. I've gone along here like this and just pulled it down to give us a little bit of a hill on this side. This side, I made it a gray color with a little white and then pulled up some grasses with some alizarin crimson and some black, and I can go ahead and add some interest here and just add some swirls and cut right up through what we painted before to make some little grasses or whatever we want to do there. But we definitely want to keep these corners dark. I still have to finish this corner. I darkened that snow and left a little bright spot there on the right with a little bit of alizarin crimson on top of the snow. And then I added some scrapings from the knife just to make some grasses. And they're very easy to make. And I added a little bit of dark brush along this side where it wasn't there, just to make it look like the edge of the water flows right over to that other tree. Now we're going to put the snow on those pine trees. I don't know if it's going to work out. There may be too much paint on here. It just depends. We'll see. You have to thin the paint to get it to stick. A thin paint will stick to a thick paint. So I'll have to get out some of the clear or some of the liquid white to mix with my titanium white to put snow on these trees. Okay, I decided to go with liquid clear. It's very runny. And we're going to just go for it here. Let's do this one first since I have the black on here. Especially we're going to put it on these hanging downs. I'm going to do them first before the brush gets too muddy. And then we'll add some bright white here in the middle because those parts will be coming towards us on this tree. And that's why it was important that we added our little bit of bark in between there, because we kind of went over some of it. But that always happens. All right, let's do the other tree now and see how it comes along. Need some more. Gotta get these hanging down ones so that they're really bright white. And the rest of it doesn't matter too much because this is our medium tree. I hope I have to scrape through some of those again. I'll scrape through with the knife here, and then I think we have a finished painting. Just go this way and this way. Because those little boogers, they don't know which way they're growing. They're just sticks growing out there. I kind of like to have these bottom corners be a little darker, but it's going to have to dry a little bit, and I'll add that later. I'll add a photo at the end.